Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
My name is Dave. I'm a parent of a daughter in college, and we live in Chicago, Illinois.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of two daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a graduate of the University of Georgia, and she is getting her master's degree at North Carolina State University. This week in the news, the college essay is dead by Stephen Marche of The Atlantic, an article many of you sent in and asked us to discuss. For a question from a listener, Lisa and I will continue our conversation that two listeners, Eric from Iowa and an anonymous listener, sent in with various questions about hiring a private college coach. And it'll be the final part of my interview with Wendy Beckemeyer, the VP of Enrollment at Cornell College, on understanding Cornell College. Quick question, Dave. I'm hearing COVID is ramping back up again, man. What are you seeing in the emergency room? I haven't asked you in a long time what you're seeing in the emergency room.
Lots of COVID, but it's much milder. The great thing is I don't see anybody dying from COVID. Okay. I'll tell you something that just happened. My friend called me up. We went over to his mother's house last night because we were having dinner, and turned out she wasn't answering the phone. It turned out she was 82. She was confused. We got her to the hospital. She's going to be fine, but he just called me this morning and said, my mom has COVID. And I said, don't worry about it. I've been quadruple vaxxed, and I think I had it last week. So If you're in my profession, you cannot avoid people with the flu or COVID or RSV. But the great news is, compared to last year, ain't nobody dying. So that is why.
Well, I've also heard that there might be a more severe flu strand this year, and make sure you get your flu shot. I mean, I don't know if this is stuff
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
true?
You know, and once again, I tell people with the flu, it may not kill you, but getting the flu shot as opposed to not getting the flu shot is the difference between missing maybe a day of work, if even, or potentially missing 2 weeks of work.
Ouch.
And
for something that takes less than a minute.
Friend, but I can't afford to miss 2 weeks of work.
I hear you. All right. Well, I have two admissions tips today, which I don't normally do, but I'm busting at the seams to get these out. And one is time sensitive, and one I'm just very passionate about. So my first tip has to do with the fact that if you've applied early decision and you've been admitted, and then you got an 8 award, and you're looking at that and you're like, we can't afford that. Before you just decline the offer, because you can decline an offer if it's completely not affordable. Schools don't like it because you're supposed to do the net price calculator ahead of time, and you should do that. And you should only move forward if you're comfortable with what the calculator says. But you should still appeal rather than just automatically decline. Once a school admits you, they want you. And there's something called professional judgment, which is something that every financial aid officer, especially at schools that require the CSS profile, and those are normally the schools that have early decision to begin with. You look at the 280 schools that have early decision, more than half of them require the CSS profile. They have over 300 different variables involved in the decision. And when they admit you, they want you. And a lot of times, if you can present a compelling case of why why they didn't properly assess your needs, they'll work with you. And so it's worth at least trying. I had a great conversation with a guy named Clint Gassaway when I was on my trip to California. He's the senior director of recruitment at Claremont McKenna, but he just left being the director of financial aid for about a decade. And we geeked out on this stuff and really got into the details. And actually, he's agreed to come on the podcast, and we're excited about it. We're going to really get into I'm going to do a part 2 on why if a student gets in 8 different places, you get 8 different financial aid offers. I did that back in 2018, but we didn't explore all the reasons. So, and I even had a conversation about this about him. I said, if a student's not sure if they can afford your school? Would you rather them not ED, or would you rather they ED and then appeal? He said ED and appeal. So that's just something to keep in mind. Don't think you automatically have to, and this is true not only for ED, don't think you always have to just accept the financial aid offer you get. I referenced Darren Morgan on Monday's episode, who runs the Arkansas Commitment Project and used to be the Davidson admission officer when my daughter went through. He has about a 75% success rate at appealing aid awards for their kids. Now, he's dealing with a lot of under-resourced kids from Arkansas. But still, appeal your aid award. Now, if you make $500,000 or you own tons of property, you're not going to win. I'm just going to tell you that right now. But if you're in that mid-range, and there's things sometimes schools can do. Like a college, for example, can, if they choose to, they can decide to include or not include your home equity in the assessment and lots of other things. So just keep that in mind. So that's tip number 1. You ready for tip number 2, Dave?
Let's do it.
So I was having a conversation last night with a family, and their student has done really well. He's got into quite a few places, but they intentionally made the decision not to early decision to these $85,000 schools because they said it's just too much money. Like, we're not going to get any financial aid, and we don't want to have that type of financial strain on our budget. But they were second guessing themselves because the neighbor got in. And now they're wondering, did we do the right thing? And this is tip number 2, and it's a really important one. Ever heard this statement, Dave? Comparison is the thief of joy?
Yes, I have. I have.
Well, how do you think that applies to college admissions? That's a softball question.
The reality is there's only one reality, and that's your reality. And if you keep messing up your reality by comparing yourself with someone else's reality, then you're living someone else's life. Live your own life. Live what's in front of you and deal with the things that pertain just to you. Because everything else with that's going on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, that's irrelevant. Okay, I was talking to, Charlie Munger, right? Charlie Munger.
Sure, of course. 95 or 6, still going strong.
Right. I was reading a great quote from him. He said, greed is not the root of all evil. Envy is, Greed is not what kills people or what destroys their lives. Envy is. It's a wasted emotion. And because you envy what other people are doing or whatever, you don't focus on the realities that are completely separate from them that are going to make you happy.
Yeah, and I go back to the advice my mom gave me when we were moving from Westchester, Pennsylvania to Atlanta, and we were house shopping, and she said 2 things, Mark: establish a budget and don't go over it.
Right.
And secondly, I don't care how nice of a house you find, there's always going to be something bigger and better out there. Basically don't get envious about it. And there's always going to be somebody who got into some school that maybe in your wildest imagination you would have loved to have gotten into. And this, by the way, applies just as much to parents as it does to students. Run your own race. Stay in your own lane. Run your own race. Stay in your own lane. And I'm going to come back to this again when Dave and I get into our article discussion. But this is just very, very, very important. And I hear so much of this. Wow, this kid at our school, he got in like every school he applied to. You know what? You run your race. You stay in your lane. Don't let comparison steal your joy. So I feel very strongly about that. And so I had to give you 2 today. And thanks, Dave, for chiming in. Love the Charlie Munger envy quote. That was right on point.
And I just want to say one other thing. We were meeting some kids now that we knew for a long time, and they were in their late 20s and 30s. It's so hard for kids to understand how truly irrelevant the college they went to becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years after you graduate. When you're in your mid-20s, no one cares.
Well, you know what, Dave? I'm itching at the bit, man. You're tempting me to go where I want to go now, but I'm gonna come back to it. I'm gonna exercise a little discipline, but I'll follow up on your point in a second. And listen, I don't want to. There is such a thing as a school snob out there that judges you based on where you went, but in the big scheme of things, it's a small percentage of people, and you'll be able to use your own gifts, talent, skills, network, resilience, personality, work ethic, motivation, drive, skill set to be a trampoline to catapult you to limitless heights. You know, is there going to be the occasional school snob that might look down on you that you went to generic U rather than designer U? Yeah, I'm not going to pretend it's not out there. But those people will not be able to hold you back from accomplishing what you want to accomplish. I'll say there are very, very few. There's a small number of professions where that matters, and you can count them pretty much on one hand. All right, enough on that, Dave. We beat that drum enough. And I don't want to apply that there's never any advantage to name, because it can sometimes be correlated to certain professions and certain locations. But it's not the most important thing, not even close. Okay. All right, so admissions vernacular. I'm excited. I'm drawing off my California trip. I learned a new term, Dave. This is a new term. Yeah, so this is not one I knew before my trip. So we were visiting Harvey Mudd, which is a powerhouse in STEM, and you'll be hearing me talk about it. And they said there's a kid that is exceptional in computer science, but we tend not to admit them. We have a term for them. All right, I'm going to give you a hint, Dave. I said exceptional in computer science, but we don't admit them. Yeah. The term is CSN. Any guess?
CSN. Okay. Exceptional.
CSN.
Okay. CSN.
I'm going to give you a big hint.
Yeah.
CS is computer science. What's the N?
Manic or
no, N as in Norman, my brother. N.
Okay. Computer science. Wait.
See Dave's competitive juice. He loves playing this game.
Computer science. Okay, not a ninny, not a nanobot, not a normie.
Did you say nanobot?
Yeah.
Did you really say nanobot?
It's like, that's not a real human out there. It's a nanobot.
Okay. All right. You lose.
It's Harvey Mudd.
Time out. We got to get to the article. The term is CSN, and it stands for Computer Science Narrow. It's the kid that they want.
Wait, that's a nanobot.
You know how to get the word narrow out of your lips?
That's nanobot, baby. I'm a nano because I am a nanobot. That's all I do.
I would hate to be a teacher when you're fighting for an extra grade. Anyway, so this is the kid that absolutely loves robotics, absolutely loves cybersecurity, whatever computer science they're into, coding. But they don't want to do humanities. And a lot of these schools are going to make you do humanities to be a balanced individual, make you do social sciences. And so it's a term they label. This kid is incredible, but they are CSN. And they may do great things, but we're not the school for them because you come here, you can do humanities, social sciences, and CS. So
because he's
I learned a new term, and I pass it on to you, CSN.
All right. Well, this is a good segue to this article.
And I know you're homping at the bit, but let me get my number out there, man.
Oh, no, sorry. You got the number. I'm sorry. You got the number going.
I am doing a little reversal, though. Instead of going big number, I'm going small number, and the number is 4. All right, check this stat out, Dave. You want to know why Mackenzie Scott, former wife of Jeff Bezos, has given so much money to HBCUs?
Yeah.
If you add up the endowment of the 10 largest HBCUs, the Howards and the Spelmans and, that ilk, all 10 of them, it comes to 4% of Harvard's endowment. So the big number is a small number today. It's the 10 largest endowments of HBCUs, just 4% of Harvard's 40 billion or whatever it's at these days. So small number, had to go contrarian. All right, take it away.
And now it's time for Hot Topics in the News.
All right. This is The College Essay is Dead, in an article in The Atlantic by Stephen Marche. It could be Marche, but I just feel French today, so I called it Marche.
Is that your French?
Because I had some French toast. Okay, here we go. Pass or fail, A or B plus. And how would your grade change if you knew a human student hadn't written it at all? because Mike Shaples, a professor in the United Kingdom, used GPT-3, a large language model from OpenAI that automatically generates text from a prompt to write it. And Sharple's intent was to urge educators to rethink teaching and assessment in light of this new technology, who he said, quote, could become a gift for student sheets or a powerful teaching assistant or a tool for creativity. He said, essay generation is neither theoretical nor futuristic at this point. In May, a student in New Zealand confessed to using artificial intelligence to write their papers, justifying it as a tool like Grammarly or spell check. Many people say that the writing of these new artificial AI programs is so good that it's at master's level proficiency. And what's worse, when students use these new artificial intelligent chatbots to write their essays, they don't feel like they're cheating, because the guidelines at the university state that you're not allowed to get someone else to do your work for you. But of course, GPT-3 isn't someone else. It's a program. And it got even more advanced just a few weeks ago when OpenAI released an advanced chatbot named ChatGPT that spawned a new wave of marveling and hand-wringing. It allows for complex rhyming poetry. Google previewed new applications last month that will allow people to describe concepts in text and see them rendered as images. And the creative AI firm Jasper received a $1.5 billion valuation in October. So what's the reason that this guy is so concerned about artificial intelligence being able to write students' papers? Well, he says that the essay, in particular the undergraduate essay, has been the center of humanistic teaching for generations. It's how we teach children to research, think, and write. But the problem is, as one professor said from the University of Toronto, with AI able to write all these essays at master's level proficiency, you can no longer take home exams or homework. Even on specific questions that involve combining knowledge, OpenAI is frankly better than the average MBA at this point. So, Mark, I'm not going to go too much more, but the main issue that he has is that a chasm has existed between humanity and technology for a long time, and the gulf is getting wider. And he's concerned that kids are going to be able to be concentrated so much in technology that they won't have to do anything with the humanities or learn how to write or learn how to actually learn basic concepts like history and geography and so forth. He points to people like Sam Bankman-Fried and Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, who are renowned for being so technology focused that they actually boast about not reading certain books or not being involved in certain humanistic fields. And he says that what we need to do is we have to come to figure out how we're going to reconcile these advances with technology with our need and our desire to teach kids the value of humanities. So let me give that to you, Mark, and see where you want to take that.
Sure. So we had a listener, actually, that wrote in and said, can you please discuss how AI is potentially making the college essay obsolete? And Dave and I had literally just committed to discuss this, so the timing was right on. This is an example of a very provocative title. Very well-written title if your goal is to get somebody to read it. As soon as I saw it came across my feed, the college admission essay is dead. Or college essays. It doesn't have admission in there.
No,
college essay is dead, right?
Yeah.
So my admissions brain went right to the college admission essay.
Which mine
not real. Yeah, because we're in that mode. And the essay is more about just essays in general. And it's a very provocative title. And it worked. This has generated all kinds of buzz. In fact, I did a Google search on it. and it has generated a substantial amount of backlash. In fact, I encourage people, try doing a Google search that says the college essay is not dead, and your head will be spinning with all the people that have written rebuttals to this. And I agree with that. The college essay is not dead, because while it's true that AI gets better and better and better and better and more sophisticated, if AI can help you produce Shakespeare-style essays, it can also develop detection systems to show when an essay is constructed by AI. Correct. And there's already some very good ones out there that are out there, and they're only going to get better. So that's the first reason why I feel the college essay is not dead, is because, hey, AI can get better at helping you sound good. It can get better detecting if it's fraudulent. Second reason why I reject it is because the college writing is just so fundamental and foundational to an education. So Janet Rapley used to be the director of admission at Princeton, your old school, Dave. And she had a quote that I really like. And I don't think I've ever shared it on the podcast before, but I'm going to share it now. So she said, "We care very much about how you write, because how you write is a reflection of how you think. And how you think is very important to us." So let me repeat that. We care very much about how you write, because how you write is a reflection of how you think, and how you think is very important to us. So to get rid of writing, or to just concede that AI is taking over everything and therefore the essay is dead, is basically to repudiate how people think, and that's never going to happen. Colleges will fight back against that aggressively. And it's not only spurred this article, the college essay is dead. There's another big topic out there. Somebody else wrote something called English is dead. And so it's generated a lot of buzz. Now, the third reason I want to rebuff this perspective comes from an article that's spreading all over the internet. In fact, it was recently in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution as a guest article written by Maureen Dowd. Dave, you know Maureen Dowd.
Yes. A New York Times columnist, always writes about his brother Kevin at Thanksgiving.
Well, Maureen Dowd has been a New York columnist since 1983, so you're 40. She's 69. Arguably the most famous columnist in the country. She's certainly up there in that conversation and probably would win if there was some kind of survey. So I want to read what Dowd said. And it's a little lengthy, but I think it's worth reading. So here's what she said. "Writing is a process of learning, not merely about a subject. It's also a learning about how that subject can best be framed for an audience. It's also a writer learning about themselves. What do they want to say? What do they sound like? What rhetorical tools best fit their skill set? Asking any algorithm to make you sound like Hemingway actually will raise the reddest of red flags for me for plagiarism, because the paper doesn't sound like a first-year student." So she's also, of course, taught quite a bit. My understanding is both NYU and Columbia, but I'm not 100% sure of that, but I know she's been in the classroom. On that note, if we writing teachers are doing our job well, we are crafting assignments that simply cannot be plagiarized. That is, an essay for my assignments can't be bought off the internet or created by an algorithm. For example, one thing I ask my students is to write an essay about 3 to 5 pictures of their own choosing. Sure, students can go select a picture from the internet, but many don't, instead using pictures from their phone. And coming up with things to say thematically about those pictures cannot be done by an algorithm. Another assignment is a research essay I give my students. 2 sources, and they have to find 2 others. The plagiarism I find now most is students stealing the examples I show from previous semesters of other students in the class when they post early drafts to their discussion board. But for the writing to learn process to work, students have to do their jobs. They have to be willing to fail, to write badly, or simply admit they don't know what to say. And that is extremely hard if indeed they've never been asked to fill a blank page with no guidance from a teacher. She goes on to say, and yes, that initial failure does bring the temptation to cheat. But what I hear from my students in these end-of-semester reflections is not the siren of plagiarism, but the fear of failure. Many students have never failed. And for the other students who all they have known is failure with writing, the process only reinforces their dread. The answer to that is not an algorithm, but advice. It's what I've been telling conferences for students every 2 weeks. This new technology may indeed be the end of English, but only a certain kind of English, a certain kind of college essay. It isn't the death of education you should expect from our state's higher education institutions. It's the opportunity to show why we feel we need more faculty, not less. We need less students in the class, not more. The cost of college has exploded due to one factor, the death of public support. Lawmakers need to think of tuition stop thinking of tuition as the burden students have to pay, but start giving more public funding and get skin in the game. So she kind of goes off on her hobby horse about we need to stop walking away from our commitment that we've done for the last 40 years to publicly fund schools so that we can have smaller classes. But she goes on to say, even the algorithm agrees with me. I asked ChatGPT myself, what is the best way to teach writing? And then she says, I don't have space to share its whole answer, but here's what it suggests. Clear and detailed feedback, helping students develop their own writing process through revision and practice, and working to encourage creativity and originality. And then she says, maybe it's just telling me what I want to hear, like some of my students. But any thoughts on that, Dave? Like she's basically saying, if you're doing true teaching, one, you'll be able to discern any algorithm because it won't sound like a first-year student. And secondly, you can do creative stuff like talk about 3 photos in your phone and tell me about them.
Right. There's so many examples. Let's take a sports example. Let's suppose you were learning how to play basketball.
Something you never learned how to do, by the way.
Well, I was too busy working on the tomahawk dunk, man. But suppose for 5 days you got somebody to do your layup drills. At some point in time, you got to get in that game. If you haven't done the layup drills and you haven't done the layup, no other person doing the layups for you is going to keep you from, at the moment when you need to actually do a layup, you're not going to be able to play the game. The purpose of learning how to write is to learn how to write. At the end of the day, kids may be able to skirt initially and put a paper in or two by Chat GPT-3, and maybe they won't get caught. But at some point in time, they're going to have to learn how to express themselves in a board meeting, at work, or whatever they go on to do. And if they don't learn to write, they'll never learn to write. And I think intrinsically, most kids understand that, which is why I think that even if this technology gets to the point where it's readily available, I believe in the integrity of most people who want to succeed, and that they will not take advantage of it because ultimately it's not going to help them.
Well, people can get creative. So one thing that we used to do in boarding school admissions, we'd get a lot of international students, and there's a lot of actually cheating that would go on with the essay. And people would hire people to write essays for them and all this kind of stuff. So what we would do is on their visit, go in the admissions conference room. Here's a piece of paper, 30 minutes, write. And they would get exposed. And the reason why I say that is, there's nothing to stop an employer from making that as part of your screening. You come through here, do the interview, you go in there, we'd like to see your answer to an essay. And so there's creative ways people can push back. And if word gets out, hey, if you don't get in there and write something, you're done, then word gets out, I can't cheat, and I better develop this skill. So sometimes we hear about technology, and we think that we're just pawns to do whatever, the chess player wants to do to move around on the board and get whatever they want out of us. But there's actually not. There's actually a lot of ways that you can push back. Now, earlier, I was tempted to take the bait, Dave, when you were talking about where you go to college will matter for about 5-7 years, then people will forget. So Maureen Dowd, obviously one of the most famous columnists in the country, She went to Catholic University. Now, Catholic University is a very fine school, but I don't see anybody, banging down the doors to put this Catholic University sweatshirt on or pepper their car with bumper stickers and say, my kid's at Catholic University. It's just not a brand name, but she emerged to be arguably the country's foremost columnist in the New York Times career for 40 years and opportunities to teach at the most prestigious schools in the country. And so going to Catholic University never held her back, and so that's another example of the point you were making earlier, Dave.
Yeah, and especially for kids who are going to STEM-based fields, let's face it, but they've got these new partnerships they are doing with Arizona State and with Ohio State and a couple of the other local universities to produce more internships and engineers to run these factories. My point being is they're not flooding the Caltech.
Yeah, and that's particularly true when you go into a field that's in demand, like nursing or comp sci, it's just true in general, right? When supply and demand work in your favor, then, you have leverage. But I think our takeaways from this is AI is coming. It's going to get more sophisticated, but so will be other creative ways of getting around AI. And writing is at the core a reflection of your thinking. Thinking matters, and schools are not going to walk away from assessing how you think and how you communicate, and neither will society. So I think that while this was a really good tease, and I think it really stimulates a lot of discussion, which I think is great. I think it's an overreach to think that the essay is dead or that English is dead. I just don't see it. Either way, friends, Dave's struggling over there a little bit with his audio. He's got a good mic. He's got this. He's just having a little tech issues getting it connected. We need Lauren to come back and fix them, and she'll be hooking us up, and we should be good to go. And Dave will get his old sound back. So
that was my Terminator reference. Did it not come through? Oh, you don't watch movies.
Exactly. It went over my head, man.
And now it's time for a question from one of our listeners.
Friends, last week you heard the first part. Now it's time for the second part.
Hi, Mark. This is Eric from Iowa. Thank you so much for your podcast. I've learned so much from listening to you. One of the primary things I've learned is that there's a lot out there that I don't know, and we need help with our son, who's a junior, in developing his list and walking through the application process. I don't really know how to go about finding an independent college consultant. If you could speak to some of the issues around when to start working with somebody, how to find somebody, what sort of things to look for, that would be terrific. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you for the podcast. It's a wonderful service. So I have a question about the location of college counselors. Now, I know that you work with students all over the country and that you send your kids to schools all over the country, but I'm wondering if there is a benefit to hiring a counselor that is in your region. And I'm wondering it because do the college admissions officers have territories? And if so, will a counselor in your region have better relationships with the people whose territory is the same one that you're in? If that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, I am in the Mid-Atlantic region. I'm in the DC area. And thanks again.
Thankfully, we had a really lovely college counselor at the high school in Illinois. And even though she had like a zillion kids, I just emailed her Monday and said, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you? And she's like, come on in and let's talk about it. And she really kind of just set me down and said, this is what you need to do. This is what your kid needs to do. These are suggestions that I have for you. And it was so helpful. But then it was like a scramble to try to get visits in, test prep. I mean, it was a crazy, crazy time that junior year trying to get that all done. So I plan to start earlier this time. And, also I think course selection is such a big thing that people don't realize. And a lot of high schools, like, they're like, well, these are our graduation requirements. And they're very different than what a lot of colleges expect. So, if your kid doesn't have a lot of really great guidance counseling where the person knows their goals and takes a lot of time with them, it's just, you're not going to get that information. Maybe until then you're like, oh, I really wish I had taken this. Obviously, like a lot of public schools, like both public school systems that I've been involved with, don't, like, the standard track is not to get to calculus or statistics in senior year. And for a lot of kids who want to go into business or engineering or something, like, it's important for them to hopefully be in those courses their senior year to show that they have that, and it makes them a much more competitive applicant. But like, kind of like they're, if it doesn't happen in 6th or 7th grade, and you don't know about it, then it's kind of a surprise at the end. So, I think that it's really helpful. And then, I have a 9th grader now, right? So, and so now I'm like, well, what are you going to do this summer? And we start talking about, like, what's meaningful to you? What would be meaningful that does not cost $10,000 because I don't have that money, and what kind of activities can you do that are going to, fill your passion, but distinguish you, and so, like, we've spent a lot of time talking about that. And finding, some volunteerism that she can do this year that might be really helpful. So, but that's because I went through this the first time and had no clue.
The other thing I want to say is, and this is really important, not everybody has to hire. There are two types of people. They're do-it-yourselfers, and there are people that outsource to professionals. Like, I look at my own personal life. Like, I'm really into, like, stocks and stock picking and research. And I spend so much time on that, where somebody else would prefer to have a broker. But when it comes to, like, all the stuff around the house, like, I outsource everything. Lawn and the weed control, and I'm not doing the plumbing and the electrical. I'm not doing any of that stuff. Dave, he can go do all that stuff. He's into that. I got a person for everything that comes. I don't want to do that. And so there are people. Every year we get these great emails that say, my child got in this school and we're so happy, and we did it by following every step of information from your college-bound kid. We've had people say, we hired an independent educational consultant. We got more out of your podcast than we got from our independent educational consultant. We've had a lot of letters like that. So I don't want people to hear this and think that you absolutely need to do this.
Right.
On the other hand, I will say this. This is going to sound like contradictory, but for people for whom money is important, I think it's most important for them to work with somebody, because one thing that we're very good at is knowing where the scholarship money is. And so one of the reasons why the profession has grown so much is, you've got big public schools with 450 to 1 ratios, and they can't give a lot of time and attention, and they're not college specialists. And then you can save somebody tens of thousands of dollars if you know what you're doing, like way more than they would invest in you. And so, you can help families that don't need money as well in lots of different ways, with strategy, with list building, with peace of mind, so the parent and the kid are not at each other's throat all the time, and the parent doesn't have to be the rule enforcer, with all different aspects of admission strategy. There's a lot you can do, but the family that I feel needs it the most is the family for whom they don't know how they're going to pay for college.
Right.
Because for them, it will pay. If somebody is good, it will pay for itself many, many times over.
Yeah. I mean, you have to kind of look at some of these expenses associated with the college application process as investments. Like test prep. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with tests, but I do know at a lot of schools, like, the higher the test score, the more the scholarship is. So if you pay $2,000 for test prep, but you bump it up to you're getting $10,000 more a year, it's like a good investment. And the same is true for college counseling. If let's say you're investing, a couple $1,000s, but you're able to really leverage your child's strength as an applicant in certain markets to get, the most aid that you can get, while still getting them, a school that's a great fit. That's, it's not always something that somebody who just walks into the situation has the time to get to the, that level of specificity to know about. So that's, it's a real value. And, I would say this, like I did my oldest daughter's process. I will never do that again. It was awful on our relationship. I feel like we still struggle with some of the feelings that she has about that. And so I'm giving my 2 younger kids to Mark.
I've already started working.
Please don't tell me anything. Just do what you need to do.
Yeah, well, the good thing is they're great kids. So I've already done Lisa. I do the Linda Lisa thing, but Lisa's already had me do a session with Sonia, a couple sessions, and so she's taking advantage of that, starting younger and doing some strategic stuff in middle. I did a couple of things with Lily, but it was really late when you came to me with Lily.
Yeah, all the damage had been done to our relationship. Now, I mean, I will say this, like probably a lot of the issues that we experienced during that process are issues that we would have experienced anyway at some point, but maybe not with the same intensity that we did then. So I don't know. But yeah, it was a aversive experience to me, and I won't do it again.
Well, this is the dynamic that's out there, and this is the typical dynamic. So you're a parent, you want the best for your child, and you see them missing out on opportunities. Maybe they're not taking a quiz or a test seriously, or a paper or a test prep or a personal statement. So you don't want to see them go off the edge and miss opportunities. So you ride them hard. Meanwhile, they're like, I'm not 12. Stop treating me like I'm 12. And it creates this inherent tension. And a lot of people will, they'll say this is the primary reason. Like, I know it's not going to be good for me and my child if I'm the one on them all the time. And Lord help you if you're a type A personality type and your child is not. And so that's a factor. You can focus more on the friendship piece of your relationship with your child and let somebody else be good cop and bad cop as well up there.
Like, I feel like I can say something really to even my husband, any member of my family. If I say, oh, the best thing to do is this, I get like an eye roll. But if some outsider comes and tells me, like a teacher or the periodontist or whatever, then it's truth. And, I think people are just maybe a little kids are a little resistant. They probably developmentally should be to anything that their parents say, even if it's like the sky is blue. Are you sure about that? So they'll take advice. Like with my students, I tell them to do stuff and they just do it. And their parents like, how did you do that? I'm like, oh, I'm not you. That's how I did that.
No, I mean, I've shared this before. I've got 2 kids and Karis was like, Dad, of course I'm going to trust you. This is your area of expertise. Why would I do it on my own? Then Joy came along and it was World War III. You don't know everything. What do you think? You know everything? You don't. And it was like fighting every single step of the way. And so especially if you have a strong-willed child.
Yeah. And her problem was you do pretty much know almost everything about college admissions.
No, I don't.
It's like a hard argument to fight against.
You're kind. So, that's, I'm glad we talked about that. And I really can't emphasize the money piece. And I want to say one more thing about the money. You may not qualify for financial aid, but you may not want to pay. Like that, we're a college coach. We're going to be really, really good also for the person that's not going to get any need-based aid. And it's very easy to not qualify with this formula these days. Home equities are up. Higher cost areas rarely get factored in. And so you may not qualify, but if you're not the person that is prepared to pay and you want to pay, like I think of a situation last year, we had doctor family that came to us and said, I don't think that we should have to pay $85,000 for a good college. So I want you to find the absolute best college for our child for under $50,000. And that family is extremely happy. Like that, anybody who's really good at what they do, they can do that. There's a lot of great options for under $50,000.
Absolutely.
So I just want to restate what I said before. It's not just if you're not going to qualify. It's if you don't want to pay. May not be, maybe you can pay the full, but you don't want to. An educational consultant is going to be incredibly valuable there. And I can't stress enough, when I said that knowledge, make sure it's knowledge of in your area of your interest, what you're looking for. Like a lot of people don't have a lot of knowledge about the money piece because they just work with families that don't need any money. They're not knowledgeable about that. So if that piece is important, and also anybody should give you a free consultation session. There's some people that don't do that. I would say that's a red flag because they shouldn't want to go into a relationship with you without testing out that it's compatible. It's a two-way street, like I don't work with every single person who wants to work with me, because if I sense that someone's not going to be compatible, then I will decline it. It doesn't happen that often, but it happens a few times every year. And so someone should be wanting to make sure there's the fit on that side. And you should want to make sure there's a fit on your side. And I would say that in general, there's two main philosophies when it comes to counseling. One is what I would call fit and match, and we're believers in fit and match. So we're going to find a unique fit and match for your kid where they can soar and they can thrive. Another is it's all about rankings. And so if this school's ranked 13th and this one's ranked 17th, then we need to go to the one that's ranked 13th over 17th. I would say that you should find someone who's compatible with your philosophy. If your philosophy is that rankings trump everything, then I think you should find someone philosophically that aligns with that. That's not our philosophy. So it doesn't mean that, like, reputation is not important, and it doesn't mean prestige can't be a factor in the equation, but it shouldn't just drive everything and be the only thing. Many times, the one that focus primarily on prestige will put the name Ivy right in their title. I want to share a story with you. So it was probably the first year we were having this podcast, and I got an email from a listener. I'm sure he's probably still listening. And he was a college coach, private college coach, and he said to me, I love the podcast. I want to know if you would give me some feedback on this TED Talk that I did. So, I wanted to help him out. So I watched the TED Talk, and I thought it was fantastic. I mean, all the points he was making about not getting caught up in prestige and name recognition and being aware of the mental health and the pressures, the toil this is taking on your kids and the parent-child relationship and the importance of fit and match. And there's plenty of places that people can soar and reach their full potential. Well, that was really good. So then I had a follow-up call with him, and I said, I absolutely love your TED Talk. It's great. But I just have a question for you. I said, why would you put the name Ivy right in your title? The clear implication by putting the name Ivy in your title is come to me and I'll help you get into the Ivy League. And he said, you know what? We've been actually thinking about changing that. We really have. We've been talking about it. But then he said this, it's really interesting. He said, we market tested all the titles out there. And when we put Ivy in the title, it blew away every other title that we could have as far as what the market was interested in. So FYI. So that's an important area where counselors are different. All right, the last part, and this was, I knew we were going to be long, 2 questions because you got Mr. Chatterbox over here.
Well, I've been adding to that, so not all your fault.
Adding insights of wisdom, little nice tidbits of dose here.
Catharsis, talking about my traumas.
So the last question said, is there a benefit from hiring somebody local in your area? I don't necessarily think so. If somebody feels very strongly about that, then they could do that. I guess if you want to do a lot of in-person meetings with somebody, then that could be a benefit. So much of this now has gone to Zoom. The craziest story that I tell people is I literally have someone in my subdivision I was working with, and they want to meet by Zoom. And then I had this other student from New York, and they wanted to fly in from New York, Uber from the airport, and meet in person. So it's just so different. But most of it now, a lot of it is Zoom. I guess if you feel like I really want to be meeting in person all the time, then looking for someone local could be good. There could be some benefit to if you feel someone has a lot of knowledge of your local high school, or if you really want to stay local in your area, there could be local knowledge there. But like some of my best relationship with the admission officers are with people all around the country. Not like I have necessarily better relationships with ones that are here versus ones. And this question was asked in the context of, aren't your relationships better with the people local? I don't necessarily agree with that. We're seeing each other all the time at conferences, at different places, travels, college fly-ins, all these things. And so I would say if that's really important to someone, it's important to someone, but I don't, if I was looking for an independent educational consultant, I wouldn't put emphasis on, are they local?
Right.
I would be focusing on the knowledge and the compatibility and the philosophical compatibility, and are the services that you're going to offer what I need. And you have any thoughts, Lisa?
I mean, I I agree with that for the most part. I mean, every like public or private school has their own idiosyncrasies, and this year I worked with a student who went to the high school that Lily attended. So I was able to say like, oh, you need to go ask this person this, or you shouldn't take a class with this person. And then he gave me all the gossip on the choir and musical theater department that I had been missing out on since my daughter had graduated. And so, that was nice. I don't think that's what was ultimately true for his success. Like here in North Carolina, we have some very interesting, screwy little policies regarding class rank and whatnot, and how it's put on the transcript that maybe other states don't have. That's, it's nice for if somebody knows about it. But you can also send them an article.
Well, I know for us, maybe I'm looking at it a little from a bias standpoint, but like biggest state was New Jersey this year. We worked with, I don't even know if Georgia was in the top 4 or 5. So you can have knowledge of, I think our top 4 or 5 states for us I think it was California, Colorado, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, Florida, and Massachusetts. So I'm looking at it that way. Now it is a little different, I must admit, because when I used to go every single month to the local HECA meetings, most of the Georgia people, it's all Georgia for them. They were mostly Georgia based. So I guess it's, I'm maybe partly thinking of it through the prism of the fact that, we have more of a national practice than a lot of people have. So maybe that's probably like influencing my thinking.
The Triangle Group, they were talking Thursday about like, what do you do if you have a kid who's not college ready? And everyone's like, oh, you got to send him to this place in Raleigh. Like, it's just like, that's what we do here, and right. I didn't necessarily know that just being here for like less than 2 years. So that was helpful for me, but I don't have any kids, on my caseload at this point for whom that would be appropriate. So, it's helpful. You never know what you're going to need to know when, but I don't think it's for most people a necessary ingredient.
Yeah, and nothing's wrong with it. Like occasionally I will lose somebody. I remember someone I lost last year to Colorado. And from Colorado that I didn't get, and I followed up, and they said, "I decided to save somebody local." And so, so nothing's wrong with that if that's your personal preference. But I personally don't think that's an important factor.
Right.
The last thing I want to share. Oh, go ahead. You had something to say, Liz.
Oh, I was just going to say, like in person versus virtual meetings. I mean, so my whole career is virtual now. Like I hardly ever see anyone I'm not related to in real life at this point, but. Some people just don't like them. And in that case, if you're a kid who just needs, and there is something, and I've realized this since the pandemic, really just, it draws your attention in a different way if you have an actual real live person sitting with you than it does if they're on Zoom. Like you have to make a conscious decision to attend to that thing on Zoom that you don't when you're with a person. Like their bodily presence calls your attention and has you listen to what they're saying. So that might be something for a kid who has a hard time engaging. That might be something that would be important for that family.
Yeah, it's funny because we spent, I think, $55,000 finishing our basement to set it all up just to do consulting. Like I turned the whole basement into this thing for like basically my office. And now since the pandemic, I see maybe one person a year in person. One. Yeah. Maybe one. I've got someone from Maryland that wants to, and people come through Atlanta, so they'll come through to visit Georgia Tech and Emory. But sometimes they come through that way, or I'll meet them at the college. But it's all really Zoom these days. The pandemic has really changed things.
Well, I mean, my office mates and I in Grades Lake, Illinois, where my clinical office is located, we all signed a 5-year lease on March 1st of 2020.
Oh, wow.
So, and then, and when I was signing it, I just had this feeling like this is not
March
a good idea.
March 1st, 2020. Lisa, could you have worse timing?
Place why, but, thankfully the rent is not that expensive. It's a great place to get mail. I still, talk to my colleagues all the time, even though none of us are there. Just one person goes and checks everyone's mailbox once.
Oh, that landlord made out.
I know he did. So, so, but some people really like meeting in person. So,
sure. Yeah. That's something to consider. If you're going to be someone that's going to want to meet in person, I would say local would be important to you.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And the last thing I want to say is I'm really glad that you believe in educational consultants, because that's how we met, Lisa. You met reaching out to me for some help with Lily, and then got to know Lisa, and I was like, this Lisa's pretty awesome. Looking to expand.
Well, right back at you. I mean, I just think that I love people who are have a passion for any kind of field where they really want to have knowledge about it and they want to use that knowledge to help other people. And psychology is one way to do that, medicine, but also engineering, accounting, anyone can have that. I just love being around people who have that kind of interest and that kind of passion. And I don't think anyone could be more interested or passionate about what's going on in college admissions than Mark Stucker. So I'm just pleased to have had the chance to work with you.
You know what? Thank you for that. And I'm going to use that as a point to share. We have a new tagline that we've come up with as a team. You're going to be hearing it, you're going to see it all over our website and that. And so our tagline, which is also serving as our mission statement, is simply making college knowledge available to all. So that's our mission statement and our tagline. That's what we're trying to do here. And we just thank you guys for listening.
All right. Thank you.
See you next week.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
All right, friends. Hopefully you've been enjoying the interview with Wendy Beckemeyer, talk about Cornell College, one of the two really well-known one course at a time schools in the country. And today will be the final part. Listen and enjoy. My other question I thought of is, why'd you come to Cornell? Anytime someone's been a veteran like you can see signs of excellence, signs of promise, signs of potential, and you sort of know what to look for when you're visiting and dissecting a school. So what was it about Cornell that attracted you and made you say, I want to make this the next stop in my journey?
Well, when we, the first time we moved from California to Missouri, it was $1,000 that we were given to move, and it cost a lot more than that. But we were, we had a U-Haul, and, we had our stuff in there, and my husband was closing the back door, and he said, we're not going to open this till we get to Missouri. And I'm like, I know, it's okay. And we got in the truck, and I started crying, like sobbing. And he said, if I realized that you didn't want to move, we didn't have to move. And I said, I want to move. And so I have to say, I'm the person who loves wherever I am. And so each school I've been at, including my most recent institution, Robert Morris University, was a terrific place to work. And I loved being there. And primarily, more than anything, Pittsburgh's a great city, and it was a wonderful place to live. But the people that you meet and the relationships that you build is what's really hard to leave. It's really hard to leave. And so there are some people that I know at Cornell that, were reaching out to me and saying, I think this is an opportunity that you would really enjoy. And ironically, our son and daughter-in-law live in the Indianapolis area, and from Pittsburgh to Indianapolis, or from Iowa to Indianapolis, it's only a 2-mile difference.
Oh, the kids, closer to the kids. That'll get the heart.
But only by 2 miles.
Oh, by 2 miles. Okay.
Yeah. So, but part of the position part of what was involved in this position that attracted me is that athletics is part of the responsibility. And I was a college athlete. My husband was too. We love sports, all parts of it. And I was on the coaching staff at Robert Morris, which is a D1 institution. So I would volunteer my time when I could. And honestly, I'm probably aging out of coaching given, where I am in my life right now. So to stay involved in athletics it's just amazing to have that opportunity. And also, be involved in admissions and financial aid, which I've had for a long time as part of my portfolio, but a new challenge, something new that I could be a part of, and something that I've loved my whole life. So, I started in this process, and Cornell is everything that I hoped it would be and more. I work for an incredible president. We've done a lot of things, including the scholarships and debt reduction, but Posse, we have, and we're adding Puerto Rico. We're only one of 2 institutions that's been chosen for that program. So
you're going to do a Posse with Puerto Rico.
Yes, and we already have one that's a virtual Posse that we're going to be enrolling our 3rd cohort this next fall. But these are big institutional decisions, and the institution is doing it. They're doing the things that as an enrollment person, you hope that an institution will do. And so that's a very compelling reason to move to Iowa.
Love it. Love it.
Let's take a break to learn about Mark's recommended resource for the week.
Friends, the recommended resource for episode 287 is a book that's stirring up quite a bit of controversy out there, and it's entitled Poison Ivy: How Elite Colleges Divide Us, and it's by Evan Mandery. And Evan Mandery did a lot of research for this book, and I'll tell you, he does not pull punches. He basically argues that elite colleges promise that they're about social mobility and about diversity, equity, justice, and inclusion, but nothing could be further from the truth. Every step along the way, they protect the rich and the powerful, but they know it won't be palatable to say they're all about that, so they have all kinds of ways in which they give window dressing to claim that they're about socioeconomic diversity and racial diversity and justice and equity. And so he goes topic by topic, whether it's the high schools they visit, how they use athletics, niche athletics that favor affluent families and reserve spots for those students, to partnerships with college counselors, to fundraising, and on and on and on. It just doesn't stop. And the interesting thing about Evan Mandery is a couple of things. One, he's a professor at the John Jay School, which is part of the CUNY School. So he contrasts how a school like CUNY is all about the things that the Ivies claim they're about, but they have this big megaphone. And so the contrast is clear. He has interviews, he has studies, he has reports. I mean, there's a lot of research in this book. And I know a lot of people would think, oh, this guy just sounds like some disgruntled guy who got rejected by an Ivy and now he's bitter. Well, the reality is he went to Harvard for his undergrad and he has a law degree from Harvard. So it does give him a little bit of stature and a little bit of credibility. In a lot of ways, the book is very similar to Paul Tufts' book called The Inequality Machine: How College Divides Us. But it's up to date. It just was released actually in October of 2022. It's definitely a thought-provoking book that's worth reading, and it's a recommended resource for episode 287. All right, lightning round time. Are you ready?
I hope so. I didn't
send you notes on this. This is where you have to trust me.
I'm going to trust you for sure.
All right. What's on your bucket list?
I don't know if I would say I still want to go to Mount Rushmore, but someplace I'd always wanted to do is I always wanted to ski the Alps.
Wow.
And I'm not sure if I'll ever do that one, but
you haven't given up the dream yet.
No, I haven't. Are
you a big skier?
When I was younger, I was, and I didn't care as much about the cold as I do now that I'm older. So.
Sure, that happens. Mm-hmm. You can't be in admissions or education. You have to do something completely different. What would you pick for a line of work?
I would have a flower shop.
Whoa! Tell us about that.
Yeah, I love flowers, and always, like, if you were to look at pictures that I take, I love. I'm so grateful, for what we have available to us to see. And so, yeah, I would have a flower shop for sure, because it also is happiness. You take flowers, bring happiness to people. I think admissions does too.
Yeah.
Boy, I might say I definitely like rose bushes. But I also like lilies. My grandmother's name was Lily. Yeah.
We have rose bushes, and what's great? They keep their color for so long.
They do. And, we had to replace a bush in Iowa that didn't make it from one winter to the next. And we put a rose bush in there, and I mean, it just did great. Now we'll see what happens this winter, but yeah, you're right. They keep their color, and it's a really happy flower.
And of course, I'm in Georgia, but our rose bushes are in full bloom here in winter now. So it's pretty good stuff.
I love it.
Favorite TV show?
Ooh, that's a good one. I liked Madam Secretary. Did you see that?
No, I did it.
It's pretty
Tell
good.
me about it.
It's pretty good. So she starts off as Secretary of State, but eventually becomes president over a number of seasons. But just all the hard things she had to do. And she did it with humanity, I thought. So I liked seeing an example of somebody that was able to, to kind of win the day, even the hard stuff.
Good. You can have dinner with anybody, past or present. Who are you picking?
I probably would have dinner with my great-grandparents again. So I was really, really lucky. I was in high school and college when I lost each one of them, but they thought we were the best people ever, my brother and I. And so my parents would go out and they'd have dinner with us, and they'd ask us about our school and all these things. And you just always felt like great around them. Like they were so supportive and interesting, and they did a lot of really hard things. They were living during the Depression and things like that. So yeah, I probably would have dinner with them again.
Nothing like going back to family.
Yeah.
All right, my last question, but it's a three-parter. Your best
Three
advice
parts.
three-parter. It's the last one. I have to go out with a bang.
Yeah, there you go.
Your best advice for students, parents, and college counselors.
Okay, so the first thing I would say is go someplace that wants you. This is one of the hardest things for families. They want to go places that are a big, long stretch. And then, one of the challenging parts of that is, let's just say it happens. Then you worry about something new. Like, will you succeed in that class? Because now you have peers that are going to be stretching you all 4 years that you're there. So I think it's really important to find a place where there's a match between you and the institution, because you're going to really thrive in that environment. And it will feel like, every day you're thriving rather than every day you're trying to stay alive. So I really think that's important.
I love that answer. And I mean, we have had over 100 interviews, and you're the first one to give it.
Huh.
And it brings me back memories when I used to do boarding school admissions, and, we'd have conversations all the times with the schools, and a lot of times, like the counselor calls, and a lot of times people would say, look, any of these three students would be admissible to us, but who's showing us the love? Which one of these students really wants us? And there's a lot to be said for going where you're loved, but on both sides.
That's right.
Right? On both
That's
sides.
right.
That's why early programs can sometimes be appealing. One of the reasons, because you're getting the enthusiast.
Yes.
And then, but you're reversing it as well. Like, go somewhere to someone place that's showing you the love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll give you an example. So I was being recruited D1, and I went NAIA, and I had the best time. I really did. I mean,
what was your sport?
Softball.
Yeah.
And I mean, the game wasn't too fast, right?
Yeah.
Like one of the things that happens when you're in high school and then you go to college, and I played for the team and was part of a team that won a national championship before going to college. So we were all being, hotly recruited.
Sure.
And I had the best time. And it didn't interfere with my studies. I was done in 4 years, which a lot of my D1 friends, they were still going to school when I was out, and coaching. So I was already out of school, had earned a degree, and now was going on with my life, and could could keep that a part of it. So I don't think that works for everyone. Some people have a burning desire to stretch and to get it, and they should go for that if that's who they really are and that's what they desire. But I think that's really important. The other thing I would say is, it's less important what you have. It's more important what you do with what you have.
And what do you mean by the first part, what you have? What
so
are you referring to? Mm-hmm.
I'm referring to anything. It could be your level of where you are economically. It could be where you are intellectually. It could be any of those things. But I think there's so much power, and we see this in the Georgetown Center for Education, that consortium. that there are engineers who are lousy engineers, and teachers that are excellent teachers, and those excellent teachers make more than the lousy engineers.
Mm-hmm.
So we all see the data that shows, well, you should be an engineer because that's where you make the most money of any degree. But if you're not good at it, it doesn't matter if that's your objective is to make as much as you can. So it's more important, whatever it is that you have, that you do the best with what you have. So if you want to be an education major, be the best education professional you could possibly be. And that's more important.
You're right. As I think about it, that really does have broad scale application to pretty much everything, doesn't it?
It does. And I think you'll be a lot happier. Of course there's peer pressure. And certainly I had peer pressure, why aren't you going to a D1 school? And it's hard to make the decision that you make, but I had so much fun. It was so great.
I'm actually really glad you used that example. We've had a few segments on about athletics recently, and my daughter played, actively. And we've talked about the D1 or bust mindset and people always striving to go to the place where they can't get in, and versus, going to a place where you'll have a lot of playing time. And so it's kind of a reiteration of some themes we've been trying to hit here recently. We've had a few series on athletics recently on our podcast.
The other thing I would say is that, and this is true for my husband and I, we both had like big experiences at some point in our lives athletically. Now, we're way beyond our peak in athletics, but we're still involved in athletics, whether it's, sports we can play now or whatever it may be. But we encounter people who still are trying to have their big experience. They're almost 60 years old and they're still trying to have, my advice is it's so much better if you can experience that earlier in your life so that you don't waste time trying to seek that later in your life. So if that means playing down at D2 or NAIA or D3, Cornell College is D3, I should say that because we're talking about athletics, but, there's a ton of D3 athletes who are really, really good and want to focus on their academics. And the athletic part of it can be completely freeing because it's not tied to scholarships. Their financial aid is not tied to a commitment to a team. So they can play and enjoy themselves and not worry about if the coach doesn't like me or if something happens, now all of a sudden, I don't know how I'm going to pay for college.
All right, Wendy, after those pearls of wisdom for students, I'm not going to forget. What about parents and college counselors?
So I think, for parents, don't pretend you're the student.
That's great.
Don't pretend you're the student. One of the worst things that can happen is a parent that fills out a housing form. Don't do that.
Or write the essay.
That's right. But you want your student to be neat. So you indicate that your student is neat so they get a neat roommate. That doesn't work. So don't be the student. It's really.
What are some other ways besides housing where you've seen the parent be the student?
So we denied a student and the parent called and I talked to the parent and I said, well, the first problem is I'm not talking with the student. Mm-hmm. So that's a problem. So
right.
When the student gets home, because it was early in the day, I said, when the student gets home, have the student call me and the parent whispers in the phone, the student doesn't know. And I'm like, what do you mean the student doesn't know?
Wow.
So the parent had opened, and this is like 25 years ago.
Sure.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, that's what I'm saying is the student.
Talk about busted. They're calling and then they're opening probably the physical mail of that day. It was probably before it was even electronic communication.
Right. And I will say on the other side though, the Tootsie Roll tubes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where we used to put coins in, it's like a little bank. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I know Tootsie Rolls. I was picturing a Tootsie Roll, but I can't picture a Tootsie Roll tube.
So it's a tube. Uh-huh. This is the generational difference between you and I. So it's it's a tube that's kind of cardboard and it says Tootsie Roll on it.
Okay.
And it has a metal top to it. And so it's like and you can take the top off.
Okay.
But if you leave it on, there's a little slit and you could put change in there. And it made it like a little bank after you finished all the Tootsie Rolls in the Tootsie Roll tube.
Okay.
So knowing that parents do this, when I worked at another institution, we had gold foil tubes where you could take the top off. And we put our scholarship invite letter for the scholarship recognition event in there because we knew the parents would take off the top and read it. And that way we were sure the student was going to come, right? so you can, you can play it both ways. But as parents, don't be the student. Let the student be the student, and also talk to them early about what affordability looks like. Don't keep that from your student because you're going to have to talk about it later anyway, and earlier is better.
Yeah. You're hitting other themes we've been emphasizing here. I love for people to hear the same things from different people. This is good.
Yeah.
And 1/10 of our listeners are college counselors. So what's your advice for them?
Well, first, God bless them, right? They're doing really, really hard work. This is, really tough environment to be a college counselor. Far too many demands on their time and too many crises happening in high school settings. So I think it's a really, really tough job and very little time left for college counseling. So my advice would be avoid the school down the street as your only recommendation, even though you have very little time. If you're going on those on the trips like we offer them too, where you go and visit schools and all of that, develop a well-informed list that you can work from with parents and students. That can really help a lot, and it helps broaden it gives the student a sense of worth also, that you've been, kind of developing something that's specific to them. I know this is hard. It's almost impossible to do for everyone, but I see far too many counselors, because of all the other pressures, focus on only the schools that are in their local area, and it diminishes the potential the student believes they have in themselves. I think that's not intentional, but I do think it's avoidable.
Wendy, this has been awesome. I really thank you for spending an hour with us. Please tell our listeners, Cornell's website, and if they were to focus on one of your social medias, would you recommend YouTube, Instagram? Where do you want to direct them? Give us at least two ways to find out more about Cornell.
Sure. So our website is cornellcollege.edu, and Cornell is 2 R's and 2 L's. So CORNELL college.edu. And for Instagram, for YouTube, for all of our social media, it's Cornell College. So at Cornell College, you will find all of those. And I think for recommendations, I would focus on Instagram and YouTube.
Awesome. This has been great. Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you at another conference or at Cornell. Yes.
Come to Cornell. We would love to have you.
I would love to get there.
We would absolutely make that happen for you. So I would love to do that. And thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure. And it's a joy to get to see you a second time on screen. And it was wonderful to meet you.
Thank you, Wendy. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Friends, on Monday's episode, I'll continue to share higher ed updates and let you know what's going on around the world of higher education, whether it's admission or current issues on college campuses. And we'll have our final part of our interview with Gus Resendez on how to avoid the potholes and the pitfalls in athletic recruitment. See you on Monday, everybody. And remember, it's not where you go, but it's what you do when you get there and when you get out of there. That's what will determine your career trajectory. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you'll get every single episode as soon as it is released. If you're interested, there are a few ways you can really support our podcast. You can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can help us pay our staff and our expenses by donating on our website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. I'm the producer of the podcast, but we have a fantastic team of 14. Shout out to our co-host, Dr. Lisa Ruff, Dr. David Williams, Susan Tree, Vince Garcia, and Julia Escobar. And to our substitute co-host, Sylvia Borgo. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs are from Kimberly Blacks. Lily Parikh manages our Instagram. Our image editor is Talha Khan. Joy Stucker does our website episode updates. And our webmaster is Stylianos Dimitriou. If you want to have a coaching session with Lisa or me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you have a question you want us to answer, or if you have a recommended resource or article you think we should discuss, just send it to questions@yourcollegeboundkid.com. By the way, check out our website, where you'll find lots of content that is not on any podcast app. Our website is yourcollegeboundkid.com. If you want to learn about other hot admissions topics, follow us on Twitter at YCBK Podcast. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting again with you every single Thursday.